Beautiful. Hello and welcome back to another panel on Slingshot Summit. Right now we have Mischief managers Shiloh and Natali joining us, and a little bit of intro for them. Shiloh and Natali are two managers at Mischief Management, and before joining Mischief, a company that manages artists including Amine, Kyle Lux, and Khai Dreams, Shiloh and Natali built names for themselves in the industry by working for Atlantic Records, Sony Artist Publishing Group, Columbia Records, and more. In this Q&A, these young professionals will tell us how they've grown their careers in the industry and how other aspiring managers and artists can too. So please join me in welcoming Shiloh and Natali. Beautiful. Hello, guys. So thank you so much for joining us today. Can we just start with a brief introduction as to who you are, what you do, and how you started in this industry?
Yeah, of course. Shai, do you want to take it?
Of course.
Sure, I'll start. Kyla, thanks so much for having us. This is really exciting. Nat and I have been preparing for this, and we're really excited to share our journeys. But yeah, so a little bit about how I started. I actually just applied for an internship right when my last semester of college. I was living in New York at the time, and I got an internship at Atlantic Records, and then I was just like, I guess I'm moving to LA, and I never left. And from there, I just started networking with different people at Atlantic, and then from there, met people at Sony, and ended up at Sony ATV Music Publishing. So really loved working there. Really, that was the foundation for just my music industry experience, even more so than Atlantic Records, just because I really started to form a community of people. And that's what music industry is all about. It's about your community and how strong it is, because you're going to end up working with friends, asking friends for favors. It's how everything gets done. But yeah, and then from there, from Sony ATV, I got a job at Columbia, and then loved working there. I worked with Sean Holiday, who's the head of, he's one of the heads of A&R there. I got to work with Solange, who's one of my favorite artists, Little Nas X, and a bunch of others. And then I met Justin, who founded Mischief Management, and he asked if I wanted to come on board and help him with Kyle and Pasquet, who's a producer he works with. Who we work with, and that's how I ended up in management.
Beautiful. And what about you, Natali?
Yeah, for me, it was right around, I kind of knew I wanted to do this junior, senior year of high school, but I really had no idea how to get involved, especially given the fact that I was in Chicago and there's only so many companies out here doing it to a bigger degree. So my freshman year of college, I was like, I need to go to California. I, for some reason, wasn't super set on LA. So I went to San Diego State for a year. And at that time, I was so invested in music, and I knew this is exactly what I wanted to do. So I was sending blind list emails honestly, every other day I'd send over 100 emails to just random people asking for advice, saying I'm a student, saying I need help, trying to get advice to figure out how to get into this industry. And I had probably 5-10% of these people get back to me, and one of them happened to be my old boss, Eric Montanez. We got coffee over winter break, and I remember coming back my summer of freshman year, when freshman year ended. I came back to Chicago, and I was like, I'm moving here. I'm gonna go to art school and go through the process of trying to figure out this whole artist management thing. I was so certain that I wanted to get into management, and just the personal interaction between an artist and a manager is for in any aspect of the industry, it's the deepest role to play for an artist. And I was like, this is exactly what I want to do. So I got coffee that same day that I got back with my first ever boss in the music industry. We got coffee, and he's like, I'm not hiring right now, but by the end of our 6-hour talk about he saw how inspired I was, how much I wanted to do this, how much I loved music. He's like I've been doing this for over 15 years or however long, and I having this conversation with you really inspired me to and reminded me why I got started, because you kind of tend to forget that down the line. And so I worked for them, and the company was called Paperam, which now goes by Nice Work, and they had Chance the Rapper, Clairo, Raven Lene, who I did Day to Day for, and Knox Fortune, a few other artists. And so I started with like day-to-day management. I kind of got the gist of like answering emails and phone calls and all that. And I parted ways with that company, and I started doing independent management with this artist, Dory Valentine, for about like a year and a half. And that's how I met Justin, actually, and Shiloh, was through Dory. Like, Shiloh was working at Columbia at the time. Justin wanted to bring me onto the company, saying, I'm looking to hire someone, or he was just trying to find a way to like bring Dory and I like into the company. And I passed the opportunity for like that time being, but I reached out to him like further down the line. I was like, listen, like, you're one of the few people that like I really love and like respect and trust in this industry, and I'm looking for a mentorship, and I'm looking for a company. And I knew Shiloh was working there. I was like, this is the perfect little team that we have. So yeah, that's kind of how I got started, and now we're here.
I love that so much. And so Mischief Management is a fairly new management company, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Justin formed it about 2-3 years ago, so not too long ago.
Beautiful. So could you walk us through a little bit about how it was formed? I know that you were saying that Justin reached out to you guys about possibly joining the company, but do you know anything about like the early development?
Yeah, so I mean, Justin went to Northwestern University in Chicago, so he's a Chicago boy too, and he was studying something completely I think it was poli-sci. Shiloh, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, it was.
He was studying poli-sci, like very unrelated to music, but always like he found Amine, I think it's like senior year of college, and they just like clicked, and this music started to pick up. Like Caroline picked up and kind of took off. Obviously, like Reel It In, like the other successes they had. So Amine was his first artist, and he was helping out with like Pasquet, I believe, around the same time with the whole Amine thing. And yeah, so 2-3 years ago, this is a funny story. I don't even know how I know this. I think I asked him recently. He was sitting in a Chinese restaurant in New York with his friends, like I think this was like around the time like his first job, right? His first official job at Red Bull in New York. And he because he had a bunch of internships beforehand. Justin, if you're watching this, I'm so sorry if I'm getting all this wrong. but yeah, he was sitting in a Chinese restaurant with his friends, and he's like, Mischief Management, that's what my company's going to be called. And Shiloh was the first employee. Ryan was the second. And
Ryan joined like the same week that I did. So
yeah, I was kind of like the newest add-on, like a couple, like maybe like 2-3 months later.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's just the four of us.
It really started with Amine. I mean, Justin just reached out to Amine and they connected, and then Caroline kind of blew up. I remember being at Columbia when Amine and Justin actually walked in, and I didn't know Justin at the time, but I was just like, wow, that song Caroline is so good. I hope we sign it. And they ended up going to Republic, but it's definitely, it's funny how Justin and I have like crossed paths so many times, and now we're working together. So
I love that so much. I feel like a lot of the times talking to a lot of people who work within the music industry, it's really fun to see like all the strange ways people overlap, because I feel like you really do like really run into everybody at least once.
Yes, that's why it's so important to maintain relationships, and to just like always, if you're gonna leave, or if you're saying like, just always maintain your relationships and have healthy communication with everyone you work with.
I love that. That actually brings us into one of our questions, which is centered about networking, which is, I know, is a super big part about being an artist manager. So do you have any advice for both artists and budding managers looking to get into the industry on networking?
Yeah, I mean, I guess my word of advice is just like be very persistent and just like always follow up. I think we were just talking about this. Even if it's just like text messages or emails, like these people get multiple. Like, I mean, I'm a startup small manager, and I'm getting over like 20-30 emails a day. And like, of course, like I'll go through the important ones, and sometimes the little ones will get lost in my drafts. But yeah, so just follow up as many times as you possibly can. Try to ask for advice or mentorship, or especially if you're a startup young manager, a lot of people, especially that have been doing this for a while, definitely want to help you. And even for selfish reasons, because just watching your excitement and your enthusiasm reminds them why they got started, which I kind of brought into like a little bit ago. But yeah, consistency, like build, like keep very solid relationships, like try to keep your reputation as strong as possible. And the thing is, it's always about the music. And the way I was saying, like I used to I didn't even work for a company, and I was 19, 20, like doing this completely alone. And like I think that was the time that I had the most people reach out to me, and it wasn't because of like what I was doing. It was basically like it was the artists and the music that we were sitting on, and that was the time that I honestly like even learned the most. And yeah, so Shai, I guess like you could say a little bit about your...
Yeah, and to add to that, I think like it's hard when you reach out to people just cold, because a lot of people are busy and sometimes they won't get back to you because they're getting hit up, like Matt said, 20, 30, 50, 100 times a day. So it's important that when you're networking and you reach out to someone, you have, I don't want to say something to offer, but you are going to them with like, look, I can do this, like, let's talk. Like, I'm so interested by what you're doing. Like, you know, it's good to just have something to offer, whether it's your time, whether it's just like a cool playlist that you have or something. Just go to them with like,
or specific questions even almost.
Yeah, like just something that shows that you've done your homework and that you're serious about their time, because that's what it is. It's time that they're offering to you, and it's time that is precious. So go to them with a reason why they should give you their time. And that doesn't have to be like this, like, oh, here, like a tangible thing. It can just be like, just show that you've done your research on the person and that you really care about what they're going to tell you.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Thank you so much for that. And I know that Shiloh already touched up a little bit on this as well. You said that you learned, you felt like you really got into the music industry once you went into Sony. But where and how did you guys learn the most about the music industry? Like, are there any standout moments that sort of jump out to you of being like, this was really beneficial as my career, in my career as an artist manager?
Yeah, I mean, for me, like when I first started out, it was of course like reading all the textbooks, like all you need to know about the music business and all that. And basically, like it's good to definitely, like as a manager, it's good to be like well-rounded on every aspect, because you're going to be dealing with everything, what like related to like PR, to like labels, talking to distribution companies, and like figuring out like splits and attorney stuff. So yeah, I mean, textbook is a good way, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's the only way, and it's definitely not. I think the most that I learned was when I got in and I found a client, whether I was doing day-to-day, of course, like working for a company, like, and I was doing day-to-day management, like answering emails, like formatting your emails. Like, I didn't think that was an important aspect of being a manager, but now, like looking back at like an email that I sent 4 years ago and like my emails now, like there is a big difference that it plays out. So yeah, for me, like working with like Dory Valentine at the time, like she like being like completely like independent and on my own, and like not having any questions to ask with anyone. Like I was kind of forced to learn more than like I guess not more than I could handle, but I was like, okay, I need to figure out like what is it that a PR company does, because they're reaching out to me right now. Like, what is it that this person does? And like a good thing is like taking a phone call, and like they'll run you through the basics of what they do. Yeah, taking these phone calls with these companies, like interacting with these people. But the best way to get involved and to learn the most is, even if it's a small artist that you're slightly excited about, like try to help them out in any way possible, even if you don't have the official title of like a manager. So yeah, that's, I guess, my advice is like try to get involved, try to get an artist to work with, like, and for an artist, I mean, I guess Shiloh could go a little bit into this on the artist aspect of things.
Well, I think so. The question was how or where do I feel I learned the most?
Yeah.
I think it's funny because at the time when I was an assistant at Columbia, I look back, like when I was in it, I felt like I don't know, I wanted to leave because it was just an assistant, and I felt like I was really like just living someone else's life and like really just organizing it for them. But Sean was my boss at the time, and he had been in the industry for like 20 years, 30 years, and he's so incredibly like smart and talented, and he has so many powerful relationships. And looking back, I actually do think that I think I'm learning a lot now though, but I think that that's where I started to learn the most, is when I was at a major label, and when I got to see how an A&R works. And I thought at the time, like when I went into A&R, I was like, oh, well, I'm just going to be looking for cool new music and trying to sign it. But what I learned was you are playing you are wearing every single hat as an A&R. Like, you are making sure that all the relationships are maintained. You're just the spokesperson for the artist at the label. So I really got to see like that role. And that's why it blends so perfectly into management, because as a manager, you're also you're wearing every hat. So I'm learning a lot with these two roles kind of like blended, but I think that's when I first started to learn a lot, was just seeing how someone who moves so amazingly through the industry and has so many great relationships, like how they move, and getting to watch that and witness it and be on those phone calls.
I love that. And I know that right now, especially with independent artists, I was talking to one of my friends, Ellie, about this, who's actually on the artist panel after this talk. But she was saying that one thing that she realized as a musician was that making music is only like 20% of what it takes to be a musician, especially as an independent artist. They're taking on the role of their own creative director, their own manager if they don't have one, booking agent. Thing. So what piece of advice would you give to independent artists who maybe don't have a manager and, like you said, like are wearing all of those hats themselves?
What advice to give independent artists?
Yeah, who don't have a manager and are just taking the role on their own.
I was speaking to Nat before this call because we were really trying to figure out like what is the best advice to give to an independent artist. And I think that it's just about having like, maybe you shouldn't be worrying about all of the administrative stuff and all like the business side of things, because what your art is going to be the most important thing. So as an independent artist, I think it's so important to really mind map and have a clear vision for what you want and what you're trying to tell the world and what your story is. Because if you have a clear vision, then when an artist or when a manager joins or a label joins, you can execute that vision like very, very easily with the team. But if you don't have a vision and you're going to let people kind of tell you like, oh, well, you should do this, you should do that, then it's going to be really hard when you get more and more voices in your head. So I just think if you're an independent artist, just make sure your vision is super clear and how you want your creative to look. Like, just have everything be really cohesive and create your own world before anyone else can create it for you.
Do you have anything to add, Natalie?
Yeah, I guess on that, like, just focus on the art. Basically, like exactly what Shiloh said. Like, focus on the art, focus on the music, focus on like all things creative. I wouldn't really necessarily like. It's good as an artist to be aware of the business, and it's good to have like. Basically what I was just saying, like for advice as like for younger managers starting, it's good to like read the textbook and like know like, okay, this is what a PR person does, this is what a record label does, and like this is how a deal works and all that. Like, it's good to be well-rounded, because there are people like, thankfully, like I haven't really gotten the chance to cross like too many in the industry, but there are people that are out to in a way like screw you over in like a shitty deal. And it's good to be like somewhat self-aware as to like some of the people that you might come across in this industry. But yeah, just outside of that, like outside of the basics, I would say focus on the art. Like, that's the most important thing. And like, managers are going to be reaching out to you. I wouldn't necessarily say, I mean, I guess from different points, like you can approach a manager, but it is best to let them kind of come to you. And like, if you have something crazy to offer, whether it's visuals, whether it's music and all that, like you're going to see a lot of people coming in. Especially like coming from a manager who's always looking for new music. Believe me, we're going to come across you in some way, shape, or form.
A manager will find you if you're putting good music out and good visuals.
Yeah, the way Shiloh was saying, like management and A&R, they two come together. Like I sometimes say this, like managers are better A&Rs than A&Rs themselves, just because we have to find the artist before they have anyone on the team, while A&Rs like find the artist when they have a whole team already somewhat built up.
Mm-hmm. And you guys there were 2 questions in the chat from someone named Shara. You guys sort of already answered this, but if you have anything else to add, they were wondering about how early on you think an artist should try to get a manager, and from an artist perspective, where should they look for that? And I think that really ties into another question I wanted to ask, just based on the importance of artist-manager relationship, just because some artists will go through trial through several different managers, just trying to find like a nice chemistry between that. So do you have any advice for what to look out for in terms of that relationship?
I mean, from my point of view as a manager and like the artists that I work with, it's very much about like the personal relationship that I have with them. And that even goes like outside of the business aspect. Like, of course, like we're going to be talking business constantly, but at the same time, like I'm almost like all three of my artists, like I'm super close with all of them. Like I consider them like one of my like closest friends. And yeah, so there's like two different types of, I guess, management styles, and it's like, okay, just strictly business, and then there's like the personal aspect. And I guess some artists, like let's say, okay, you have all the friends in the world, like even outside of that, like you just want to work on the business aspect, like you don't want to, or like maybe like you don't want to open up about like your personal life. And then just find a manager that's like very much like strictly business. And like if you want something like deeper and personal, because like management is a lot of trust, and you do really need to get to know like your, like from a manager's perspective, like I really need to get to know my artist, because I'm going to be talking in their behalf, and like what would they want me to say when I'm taking these phone calls for them. So of course, like you're going to really have to like get to know your artist and like what they like and what they don't like. And yeah, so try to find someone that you're comfortable with, someone that you could trust, someone that is passionate about your music the same way that you are, because very much like the way you guys were saying, like 20% is the music, and like the other, I would even now, I would say 50% is the artist's responsibility and 50% is the manager's responsibility, and or like the business, not even manager, but like the business aspect of the music. And our importance plays equally, so there needs to be a balance between both sides in order for the career to succeed, in order for the music to get out to the world, and for your exposure to be met. So I guess that's my answer to that question.
Yeah.
Beautifully worded. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think that it's funny. I think that there's so many different worlds within the music industry, depending on what kind of music you're putting out. So it's about, maybe a manager finds you and they reach out and they're cool, but they don't have the same contacts that you need for like the world that you're trying to enter within the music industry. So like, or you really like the manager as a person, but like you also need to make sure that like they are connected in the way that you need. So when you talk to the manager, it's important. I mean, it's just so important for an artist to do their research. Like they have to know their manager's past, like where they've worked, who they know, because that's important. Like that's how a manager is going to get you further along, is with their relationships. So it's an important thing to ask. Maybe it's an awkward thing to ask, but it's an important thing to ask what your manager's done in the past, because they really can make or break your career. It's your responsibility as an artist to make the music that's wonderful, and that people are going to want to listen to, but the manager is what's going to take you far. So it's really important that you're just serious and you don't just say yes to the first manager that reaches out to you, but you really like vet them and make sure that yes, you get along with them on an interpersonal level, but also they have the relationships that you need.
Mm-hmm. And are there any, like, for lack of better terms, like red flags you would recommend artists to look out for when going through managers?
I mean, I guess like red flags, like if you see that from like the first meeting, like something's just not genuine, and like they're not as passionate about your music, or they don't really know about you. Like as a manager, like I do my research like a month before I reach out to this artist, or like I'll reach out to them, but I'll be spending like 2 nights like literally reading about them, everything about them. And even if I have certain questions, I know exactly what it is that I'm asking. And I guess that comes from like a passionate perspective of mine. Like you really want to make sure like the managers that you're working with like are passionate about you and your music, and like hype you up in a way, but you also don't want yes men. That's one advice that I'll give to any artist, is if you have a team of yes men that you should run from, you want someone to tell you no. Your managers are going to be people that your guys are going to come in disagreement, but you're going to need to find a middle ground, and sometimes you're not going to want to do something, but we'll walk you through why we think this will benefit you in your career. So yeah, no yes men on the team, I guess, is my answer.
Yeah, I think if they've done their research on you and it feels genuine, I mean, I feel like artists just have really good intuition sometimes, especially when it comes to like meeting new people. So just trust your intuition. If you get a really good vibe from someone, then, also do your research, but you gotta trust. And if they're name dropping but they can't deliver, like you have to be wary of that as well. So it shouldn't be like, oh, well, I met you, you're my manager now. Like it should be weeks of really getting to know that person, because, you know, everyone seems good at the beginning.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, literally most of the time, almost every single artist that I've interacted with, I spend over 4 to, I want to say 8 months getting to know them. Before we actually like shake hands. And even if someone wants to help you out, like maybe do one release with them, like one single, and see how this plays out. That's how every single artist that I've worked with, I'm like, okay, let's start with a single. Let's see if we get along through this release, and like let's see how we work together. Let's see if like I'm able to actually bring to the table exactly what you're looking for. And yeah, so kind of feel it out. Don't sign any deals right away. Don't rush into something. Take your time. Meet as many people as possible. If there's 6 other managers that want to meet you, then take all those meetings. One form of advice: absolutely take every single meeting that you can, even if it's some random label. I'm gonna just make fun of. I'm gonna say some random label in Bulgaria because that's where I'm from. So like, which I don't even think they have record labels, but I'm saying, like, if it's some like, take the phone call, even if it looks like a joke. It's good to keep that, especially at the beginning. Like once you're starting out, like it's good to keep those relationships.
Yeah, and you never know if you'll run into them again. And
they're in a completely different place.
Yeah. Thank you. So your answers are so well thought out. That just like knocked out like 4 other questions that I had. So with that, we do have a few coming in from the chat. One of them from Katerina says, any advice for people, specifically students, wanting to get their foot in the door of the music industry? Which I know that you guys already touched up a little bit on as well, but reiterating some importance.
It's funny. It's so crazy with COVID, because nothing is like you can't really do anything traditionally anymore. So it is really about I don't know, reaching out to people on IG. Like I think that like even better than email, like Instagram, they get to see kind of like what you've done, or if you've done anything with music, and they kind of get like a taste for who you are. So it's just reaching out to as many people as possible, who not just random reach outs, but like who are doing cool things that you like, the music that you like, reaching out to those people, and maybe you'll get a call back or DM back, and just make sure it's just deliberate. Like you're reaching out to people that you would want to sit down with, that you would want to like have a conversation with, because maybe with COVID, like maybe they will make time for a 10-minute phone call. So I think that right now specifically, it's just about finding like a niche of like what you really love, and then reaching out to people who work in that niche. And it's better if it's smaller companies or smaller labels. Just because I feel like with the bigger that you get with the labels, like the less that they're going to open up the email.
Yeah. Do you have anything to add? Or next
No, I will cover it up pretty great.
Okay, beautiful. And then we have one more from Brandon, who says, what are the most difficult or unique circumstances you've dealt with in your day-to-day work?
I think
there's so many. I mean, it's just because Nat was saying earlier how it's like being in a relationship without like the romantic part when you're working with artists. So sometimes it just gets emotional. So I think that like the most difficult for me, at least, have just been having to have like really hard conversations, or like if it's hard not to. I'm trying to see. I used to work with this artist who I'm no longer working with, and it was really, we had really bad communication. It was really hard for both of us to get things done, because like I wouldn't get an answer back, or it just wasn't a good fit. So I think that was the most difficult for me, just lack of communication. So that's why even in any relationship, like friendship, manager, artist relationship, just like always having an open line of communication. Like if you're upset with something, talk about it immediately, or wait a couple hours until you cool down, but talk about it. Don't let it just sit there and fester.
Yeah, that's definitely, that's a good way to put it. I mean, that's the thing though. A lot of artists, which I guess with time, you start to understand that, because at the beginning, I remember when I first started managing, I was like, oh, why aren't they getting back to me? I need a response right now. Like, you just kind of get used to like the constant follow up. Like me and Shy deal with it. Like we're like work through it like day to day. Yeah, so like artists are not going to get back to you, and it does get difficult, like not hearing back, and like you're like, okay, well now I have like 6 other people waiting on us. But yeah, be consistent, give them a call, like try to figure out like any way, shape, or form to get in touch with them, whether it's a DM or whether it's a FaceTime call. But yeah, that's definitely the most difficult thing that from day-to-day perspective is like communication with certain artists.
Yeah, and establishing clear boundaries. That's
from the beginning.
Can of worms.
Yeah, beautiful. I believe that wraps up all the questions that we had for this. If there's anything else you'd like to throw out there.
No, if anyone in the chat or who's watching like wants to chat about management or is interested in getting into it, I have some time this week, so I'll respond to emails and DMs. I think my Instagram is linked in some way, but I think it's really great that you're doing this, Kyla. It's so hard right now during COVID to like meet with people, and I know that I miss meeting new people so much. So I'm really open, especially for whoever's joining this chat. I fully support this. So please reach out if you have any questions. But
yeah.
Likewise. I was like, yeah, no, definitely reach out. If there's any kind of, I mean, as a startup, like it's always difficult to kind of get your foot in the door, but always hold your head high, and there's going to be a bunch of people that are going to turn you down, but be as persistent as possible. Things do end up working out in your favor, especially if this is really what you want. Just figure out a way to get involved, and the first step is always the most difficult one, and once you're in that door, every other step from there is up to you if you want to climb up or you want to climb back down. So yeah, just remember why you started, and for hopefully all the good reasons.
And one more thing, actually, I feel like managers, actually they're entrepreneurs. So I think that like a lot of people are like, oh, well, how can I work at this company? How can I do this? How can I do that? Like, I do think it's important to learn from these companies, but you are an entrepreneur and you are going to create opportunity for yourself. So I think that if you're approaching management from that perspective, like, how do I create opportunity for myself? How am I going to add value? I think that like that's the best question to be asking yourself at the beginning, instead of like, oh, how can I work at this company? Because then it'll magically like give me all these connections. We're not living in an age where like you're walking into an office anymore. So be really like just be creating the opportunity for yourself. Just be focused on like, how do I add value, and like in what ways? Because we all add value. Just figure out and narrow down like what it is you do, and then just show people. I don't know how. Be creative with it, but you're your own boss now if you're going to be a manager. So
that is true. And I guess one more thing that I'll add is find a mentor. That's basically, I missed that when I was talking about my intro. My intro is the first person in the industry that ever helped me out was a mentor it was Vance Joy's manager from Australia. And it was one of the first females that I got in contact with in the music industry. Her name's Rachel Tulich. And I am still this day super thankful for her. She took me and showed me all the little ropes. And even if she had a 5-minute gap in her calendar, she would take that call. So, I mean, try to find yourself something like that that's able to help you out and help guide you. Whether that's me, whether that's Shiloh, we're more than happy to help in any way that we can. And yeah, thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you, Kyla.
Thank you so much for being here. And if anybody in the chat is interested, I do have Shiloh and Natalie's Instagram linked on the Slingshot Instagram, which is Slingshot Official. And if you found this information useful, please head over to sling.la/donate to donate to Music Cares, helping out artists, especially during this pandemic. And stay tuned for the artist panel, which comes up next. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, Kyla. Bye, guys.
Bye.